understand what I said? What are the reasons why that could have happened?
Lead fell off.
Lead could have fallen off and then fell back on.
I was going to say that, but then how does it get reattached?
Short circuit, a wire is loose.
Stick it back on.
No, absolutely, and I would argue that, you know, Emily says that, and I would argue that that's probably one of the first things you should always pay attention to, right? If you can't turn your TV on, look at the wall plug first, right? Absolutely. What else could have caused me to have that moment of asystole?
The rhythm could be a sinus block or a pause.
I could have a sinus block or a sinus pause,
Or rest.
or an arrest, because I didn't give you any other information. So absolutely. What else could it be?
Be artifact from the bouncing around in the back.
Could it be artifact from bouncing around?
That wouldn't look like
Just asystole.
It wouldn't be asystole,
Yeah,
yeah.
because then it wouldn't look like a systole. It'd look like
Knock a
a
wire.
fibrillation of some sort.
Maybe you
they
pushed
actually
a
went into
adenosine.
a Fine VTAC.
Maybe they went into a really fine.
We have to look really
VTAC.
close. You mean VTAC?
Very fine VTAC.
Boy, that would be microscopic VTAC.
They have low conduction, yeah.
So they got momentarily really fat for a minute, and then it all went away.
Dude, that's the dream, huh?
Just keep them coming.
That's something.
Kill
What
them
else could it
again.
be?
You pushed adenosine?
I could have pushed a drug just now, or
Or
someone might
shocked
have
him.
pushed a drug. Yeah, I could have shocked him, maybe. What else? You've all named some pretty good ones.
Something's wrong with the machine.
Could be something wrong with the machine, absolutely. You've all named some really good ones. You haven't named the most common one though yet.
The person died.
You haven't named.
And then came back.
You haven't named the one that it is 95% of the time. Give or take.
Can you go back to explain the rhythm again?
Yeah, you have normal sinus rhythm. You're looking at it from a distance. You know that it's a normal sinus rhythm because you already previously looked at it. And while you're watching the monitor, you notice that all of a sudden it's a systole, and then it's back to a normal sinus rhythm again.
Like how many beat has it dropped?
I didn't define that. Do you want me to define that?
Yeah.
One or two? So of the things that you've discussed so far, you've discussed
Could it be a PAC then? Yeah, the most common cause of an unexpected pause is a PAC.
You discussed the mechanical problem so far. Lead fell off, there's something wrong with the machine, great. You mentioned a sinus
Non-compensated.
block. You mentioned a
Well,
sinus
actually, we don't know how long it's.
You don't?
Yeah.
pause or arrest.
Who knows, you know?
Arrest.
2 or 3, yeah, so 1 or 2.
You're right, but on the first thing that I said, these two things were named,
Yeah.
but you're right. But you haven't said the most common one.
Non-conductive
PAC.
A non-conducted PAC.
Get amped.
Now, as you're looking at that moment of asystole, and you're,
Bam,
and
right
you're
there.
trying to make the decision between sinus block, sinus pause, or non-conducted PAC, where's the next place that you'll look to make that determination? Where in the EKG will you look to give you guidance over where you're looking at that? Take a minute to think about that. Don't say it. Just take a moment. Think about that. My question is, where in the EKG will you look to help yourself immediately determine which of these it most likely is? And you're already thinking that it is most likely which one?
2.
Non-conductive
A
PAC.
non-conductive PAC. You
But so
should be thinking that.
Are we assuming that our strip is like printing out while this is going on? Or are we just
I'm
looking at-
assuming that that is either happening frequently or you can get it printed out to you.
Okay.
Because you have to be able to go back in time to look at it.
Yeah?
Will you ask your question one more time?
I will ask it one more time. I want everyone thinking about it. I had a normal sinus rhythm. I had a systole. I had a normal sinus rhythm. I was asking myself, why did they go into a systole for a moment? I'm looking at the different things that could cause me to have a moment of asystole within my sinus rhythm. Non-conductive PAC, sinus block or sinus pause. I should be thinking of non-conductive PAC first. And now I'm wanting to know where on that EKG I should look next to help determine which one it likely is, or to rule in or rule out one of them. That's my question to you. Take a moment.
Would you look at the septal leads for a block? So we were discussing with Doug.
Or the,
For a block. To rule out a block.
but would you space it out to see if it's pause or?
Right, but you're looking at sinus block, sinus pause.
Yeah, that'd be
So wouldn't that be the,
same on
that'd be
lead?
the spacing?
Yeah, I'd
the
say it's the
spacing.
spacing and your
And,
rhythm.
and non-conductive PACs would have P waves, so if you have no P waves, if you have P waves, it is PAC. If there's no P waves,
I
then
think it's just looking at.
But you're just looking at the sinus block, sinus pause.
non-conductive PACs would have P waves.
Okay.
Like the gap.
So Shannon has something to say. He's making a claim.
My claim is that after that last normal sinus beat, I would look for see if there's a P wave.
I don't know what you mean by that. I know what you mean by that, but I
Well,
don't
they're
know
talking
what you
about
mean by that.
I
non-conductive
want to know
PACs.
if that P wave
Sorry.
one came in time
We
with
thought it
all
was
the other P waves.
it was a third degree, but that's it.
Where would you be looking? Where is the best place to look next?
After, my statement of after the last normal sinus rhythm none.
I don't know what that means.
So you have all the
Before that
normal,
non-conductive pause.
The arrest.
normal rates, normal QRS, a P wave matched to a QRS. You have normal
Sure, I know what normal sinus rhythm is. I just don't know where you're actually looking.
Right before the
I'm looking after the T wave where I would
But
expect.
now that's different. Now I know where you're looking.
Okay, so after the last T wave, where I would expect the next set of rhythm to come in play, if it's PAC, the P should be coming in a little further, but it's not conducted to a QRS.
Okay? I don't see a P wave in that location.
So then it would,
So,
it would not be it wouldn't be a PAC.
so I'm looking at the regularity, whether it's, so before, the rhythms before, and then the rhythms after the pause, the asystole.
Okay, well, let's start with it's regular.
Okay.
So what does that tell you?
So the next thing that I would
So-
do is my
Hold
last.
on, like, it's regular. What does
So
that tell
it's
you?
probably a non-conductive PAC,
What if it's irregular?
then it's probably not. Then I have to, then I have to, go through the other ones.
So you're saying this is what you have.
Mm-hmm.
You get my shorthand here, right?
Yeah,
This is your systole.
yeah,
You're measuring these to find out if this comes back in time with when it should have come in.
yes,
Is that right?
yes.
Okay, and it is. What does that tell you about which of those three it is?
Probably more likely a non-conductive PAC.
Okay, so if it is in time, he says it's a non-conductive PAC, okay? And it's not.
Okay, not coming back in time,
Yep.
so.
Just could be
How does that rule out
non-compensated.
a non-conductive PAC?
It could still be a PAC, just non-compensated.
Oh, so how does this tell me? which
doesn't.
one it is?
Okay.
Because it could be compensated and non-compensated.
So back to my question, how does that tell me which one it is?
I want to look at the last T wave,
Why?
because the last T wave would have a different morphology than the rest of them.
If what?
If there's a P wave inside that T wave, that denotes a PAC, non-conductive, but the T wave is different than all the rest of them. If all of them, of all the other ones that you see at are the same, if you have one that has a different morphology to it, there's a P wave buried inside that T wave.
John, understand what you just said?
Yes.
Y'all see that? So here's my P wave. There's my T wave, P wave, T wave, P wave, T wave, P wave, T wave, P wave, T wave, right? So he is suggesting that we look there,
Compare it to the other T waves.
and compare it to the other T waves. So if I had a T wave, this T wave is like that. What does that tell me?
Is it jump to PJC maybe?
What
That's
does my T
something,
wave represent?
the repolarization of the ventricles.
Okay, so if my T wave looks like this, what does it tell me? given the circumstances I already gave you.
There's something wrong with repolarization?
Just atrial, that's a P wave.
Yeah, either that or
It was trying to
did
conduct,
something
but it didn't.
take away the amplitude of it?
Hey, why
I wanna
would
be,
you
I wanna be
take
clear, I
away
want you to
amplitude?
take some time to think through things. Here's what I heard off of this. So Chandler just gave an explanation for something. And then I showed something, and what I got back was something like this. My car won't start. Why won't your car start? I don't know, but my car won't start. Okay? Did you put the key in and turn it? No, let me try. I put the key in and I'm turning it, it won't start. What do you think the problem is? Well, you must have a flat tire. What does the flat tire have to do with my car not starting? So, here's my P waves. Do they all look the same?
Yes,
Here's my QRSs. Do they all look the same?
yes,
Here are my T waves. Disregard that one. Do they all look the same?
yes.
Okay, so what do I know about the repolarization process of these QRSs?
They're all the same.
They're all the same. So what do I know about the repolarization of this QRS?
It's not,
It has to be the same. Do you understand that?
yeah,
If this is all exactly the same all the way through, and this is all exactly the same as the result of what happened here, and this is the same as this, what do I know about that?
it's gotta be the same.
I'm sorry, wait, I don't,
You
I
bet.
have a question.
You bet.
So, for your QRS, if it's depolarizing, it's going to, it's contracting in unison, right?
No,
Or,
it's depolarizing.
it's depolarizing in
So
unison.
electrically, it's, yes,
Yes.
I'll accept that.
Okay, so for repolarization, it's repolarizing opposite of the way that it depolarized, which is why it's upright.
Sure,
Okay,
in lead two, yes.
so how are you able to draw the parallel that those two things could not, how are you guaranteeing that there could not be an ischemic problem that's affecting your repolarizing process and not your,
There could be. There could
can
be.
you,
But if I had a ischemic problem that's affecting my repolarization,
It should
Right.
affect.
Right.
one, it would affect my repolarization all the time during that window of time that I have them. Or if it only affected it for one beat, if it only affected it on one beat, it would change what my next one looked like. Because if I had an
Yeah.
ischemic problem that changed my repolarization, it would have an effect on the next depolarization. Because something was changed and wrong with it.
but it took a little break.
It did take a little break.
So why would it necessarily, if you give it enough time to reset fully, what would make it, your QRS still altered by that temporary
That is a
ischemic
That is
issue?
a possibility. But how much of a break did I take here?
Quite a bit. 2 or 3
One-
beats,
one
2
break?
beats.
1 to 2 beats.
Like 1.5 beats, yeah, is what I took here. So I'm not in a situation where we had something bad happen and then it wiped things out. And this is all the same as this, which leads me investigatively to know that nothing really happened bad enough to make any changes. Because if I'm looking at this, and it's the same as this, it means nothing happened to the heart. Nothing bad happened to the heart. Nothing bad happened to the heart because the heart is still cooking along exactly like it's supposed to. I'm not saying that this was not a bad moment, but what I'm saying is that this bad moment did nothing to rearrange or change anything that was happening here. The heart doesn't even recognize that there was a problem. And we're asking why that could be, what that could be. And so I'm looking at all of my investigation process. If my route of repolarization changes because there's a problem in the heart, whatever that case is, repolarization is not I want to be careful about this. It's not completely independent of depolarization, right? Repolarization happens because of depolarization. And depolarization is able to be accomplished again because of repolarization. But if I have a problem with repolarization, something was ischemic, for example, my sodium potassium ATPase pumps weren't working properly, something's changed about my repolarization, then it means that my heart will be affected in some fashion down the road also. Something will be affected. You don't live, we teach things in A&P in singularities. That's how we teach it, to help people understand a concept. So we teach things like, you've got one sodium potassium ATPase pump. You have one muscarinic receptor. You have one beta receptor. That's not how the heart actually, it's not how the body actually works. The body is integrated. So if I had something here that changed my repolarization of that heart because something went bad, it will affect the downstream change. It might be a change that is only, say, the rate or the regularity of something. It might be the change in that repolarization process consistently. It might be the change in how it's affecting the interaction between the ventricles and the atria. But there will be a change. Now, am I saying that what Annalise is saying could never happen? No, it's possible that you have a moment that a fluke happened, a drug-induced something or other that was absolutely momentary, and during this time, everything was reset and it came back to normal. It's possible, but I'm also looking at my probability, and I'm asking, what is the most likely thing to have occurred? And if I'm looking at my EKG, and I see everything is the same over here, and everything is the same over here, and as I'm looking at everything being the same, I notice that everything is the same right up to that T wave also, then my question is, what is the likely reason why this T wave has changed its morphology?
My confusion is, if we're potentially talking about a P on T situation, how is the T wave smaller?
That's my,
Here's my P wave,
is it because it's not meant?
here's my T wave. Okay? If I, and we're talking about an additive situation, if I add this P wave to this T wave, what's my net result?
It's even bigger.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be bigger, because.
Or a notch, or,
Because,
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Do we agree with?
Yeah.
Is this one possibility?
yes,
Great. Here's my T wave.
Once there was
Here's my T wave.
a P wave during.
And I drew this.
Repolarization.
And I drew that as my net, right?
yeah.
Yes?
Ah,
What if my P
Inverted.
wave was like this?
so that would be my question, then you potentially had a junctional rhythm, or well, I guess it's not junctional.
I guess it would just depend on where in the atrium.
Yeah.
Right, it's an ectopic.
If I had a junctional rhythm, if that was a junctional rhythm, what do I have to have?
Less than 0.2 OPRI.
QRS. Oh, thank you. I have to have a QRS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the junction is initiating the QRS,
Yeah.
right?
So-
Do I have a QRS here?
No.
No.
So is it possible for it to come from the junction? Do I have a QRS here? So is it possible to come from the ventricles?
No.
No. So my only possibility is that it's coming from the atria or it's not coming from
Gotcha.
anywhere. Right?
You'd just be really close to the junction.
Yeah.
Or somewhere where the camera's viewing.
Well, I mean,
Backwards.
Yeah.
if this is the location of my PAC, what direction is it traveling?
More away
Everywhere.
than
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So therefore, in lead two, what's it gonna be?
Inverted.
Inverted. And if I have an inverted P wave additive to a T wave, what's it gonna make the T wave be?
Lower.
Cool, thanks.
Right?
Thank you.
So if I'm using my investigations for a moment, and I'm blending my investigation with statistics, what's the most common thing, right? And I know that this is the most common reason. And I know it's the most common reason because why? And don't say because Cory told me so.
That's what statistics have shown us.
Because, bam,
Because how
Can you explain that
common are,
again?
how common are PACs in general?
Common.
Like, how common?
Like they happen like every while.
Every while.
Every time somebody,
Like once a year?
like every couple hours or something.
Yeah, people go through PACs all day long in some fashion, right? They happen all the time. PACs are common. So we know that it's very, very common. These are caused by what typically? Most commonly, they're caused by, yeah, ischemic tissue or damaged tissue of some sort. Or there could be some special moments, drug-induced things, that kind of stuff, that's fine. But they're caused by things that don't happen very often. This is caused by what? The most common thing that causes a PAC is what? You can name it in one, you can name it in 2 words. That works too, but I'm not with you every day. But what is with you every day? What's that?
A sympathetic response.
That's right. Your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic system is what's with you every single day. That's the most common thing that's going to cause a PAC. What determines if that PAC is going to be conducted or non-conducted?
Outside the absolute refractory period or inside the absolute refractory period?
The timing of when that PAC came into play. If that PAC happened to come into play at the time where the ventricles were still in their refractory period, and the atria will be done with its refractory period long before the ventricles are, right? That's the whole purpose of the AV node, is to give some delay in there, which means also the atria will be long past its refractory period before the ventricles are past its refractory period. So it's just timing of that PAC.
So if it's a timing issue, why are you not just constantly plagued by the RNT phenomenon? You know what I mean? Like if you can just throw a PAC whenever,
Yeah,
and it's just a matter of timing, what stops your body from accidentally throwing one that conducts on top of the T, putting you
because what, so here's my T wave,
Some AV block.
there's my T wave. There's my P wave on top of the T waves,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Okay, and your question is, why are we not getting an R on T phenomena? And I'll take that a step further and say, R on T phenomena should cause a, like, V-fib,
Yeah,
right?
it really
Great.
is bad.
So, do I have R on T here?
No, you have a P on
I hear a
T.
yes, and I'm assuming that, and what did you say, Emily?
I said it's a P on T.
Is that an R on T?
No.
Where would the R wave for this P wave happen if it was going to happen?
Right
After.
in there.
After it goes through the AV node, so a
So
little
where would
bit,
it happen?
Less than 0.2.
point 0.2 down the
Okay.
road.
There's my R wave that would be associated with this if it was going to be associated with it. Is that an R on T?
No.
I've got a P on T. What does the P have to do with ventricular depolarization?
Nothing.
Nothing. This is just 2 events happening simultaneously that have nothing to do with each other because there's a delay in them, right? In order for me to get an R on top of my T, where would the P wave have to have occurred? Over here, right?
Right.
And that would happen during the QRS. And can you depolarize something that's depolarizing? I know that's a trick question, but can you?
Depolarize something that's already depolarized?
Yeah,
No.
exactly. So if I had a P wave that happened on top of my QRS, that wouldn't give me an R on T anyway, because the P wave that happened right there
Won't do anything.
wouldn't cause a QRS.
So it's
how do you
impossible.
get an R on T then?
How do you get an R? Well, that's a great question.
It's
How do
impossible.
I get an R on T?
Shocking.
In normal well, I should say in abnormal physiology, because it wouldn't be normal to get an R on T. How would I be able to get an R on a T in a normal person?
Shorten their absolute refractory period somehow?
Maybe.
Their heart repolarizes the wrong way.
How would that put an R on top of the T?
So so normally it repolarizes back towards the AV node, or from the outside in. If it repolarized from the inside out due to ischemia from a previous heart attack, then you could possibly have another, if you were in AFib or something and you shot another QRS complex into the ventricle, the R wave would simultaneously catch up to the T wave.
Do I have to have it repolarizing backwards from the way it normally does for that to occur?
So,
All I have to have is one of a couple things. I either have to have a collection of cells that did not depolarize with the rest of the cells at the time, and then they depolarize after that, right? So in other words, I have this T wave is happening because of this QRS, but that QRS did not involve all of the ventricular cells, and the rest of the ventricular cells that didn't depolarize here were forced to depolarize here, and now I have an R on T. Or all of the cells depolarized properly, and then in the repolarization, around the time that I switched from my absolute refractory period to my relative refractory period, something else stimulated those cells that were already past their absolute refractory period to depolarize again right there. In other words, another signal came in on top of that. Those are the ways that I get an R on T.
The first one that you mentioned there, can that be common with a like bundle branch block?
Not usually, because in a bundle branch block, you're not preventing cells from depolarizing, they're just taking longer to do that depolarization process.
Would it be feasible or statistically possible to have a long enough block in there to where one side starts to repolarize, but then this one is so delayed that it backfires into this one?
Not in terms of like a bundle branch block. You'd have to have something that completely stopped the polarization. The bundle branch block isn't that depolarization is stopping at all. It's that it's just going cell to cell instead of through the prevention system.
why does an R on T cause the
But once you have an R on T, now you have these cells that are being, it doesn't always, by the way, but it can, because now you have these cells that are depolarizing from this stimuli, but these cells did not. Then these cells get stimulated by a different thing, and now you have two different pacemaking processes that are going through. So you might see two different pacemaking processes, or you might have disrupted it because these cells are not, the ventricular cells are not really designed to be coordinated in and of themselves. They all have their own IF channels that they're reaching, this kind of thing. And so as they all are depolarized, they sometimes get off on when they are, and what they're listening to as their signaling process to depolarize. And as that starts to happen, VFib is one possibility, because you have them mistimed now.
That's why we try and shock them to reset it so they're all back on at the same time.
Yeah, so we send whatever the signal was that caused these to depolarize, fine. These ones still depolarize off the normal process. These ones are no longer depolarizing off of that normal process because they're mistimed now. Now, as these ones are repolarizing, they're refractory to these ones, right? But there's also no signal that is forcing these, so they're all reaching their own threshold independently. So we end up with a whole bunch of cells independently reaching their threshold. These ones are still organized, but these ones are not. And when you have a whole bunch of cells reaching their own threshold independently, what's that defined as?
And
Well, it's
so,
defined as fibrillation, and if it's happening in ventricles.
Does that have to be during a tachycardic rate? Because if it's at a slow enough rate, wouldn't the time for that signal be enough time for everything to repolarize?
Yeah, it depends on what's causing the heart to do that. You do commonly see it in more tachycardic situations. And that's where you start to see it. Because normally we're seeing it with like an initiation of a PVC. Something like that that initiates it.
and so you can also reset cells that are in their absolute refractory period with enough electricity.
No. you're in your absolute, when you say you're in your absolute refractory period, it's because you can't listen to any other signal because you are still.
So why would a shock then, how does that reset them all if some of them are in their absolute refractory period and some of them aren't?
Ask that question a different way, or in what circumstance are we talking about?
So if you have someone in VFib and some of their cells are in their absolute refractory period and some of them aren't, and you shock them, why does that make them all?
Line up.
Yeah, good question. So you get a large enough shock, and you just make sure that everything is depolarized. So some of them
Okay,
some of them are refractory and aren't listening to that shock, but it doesn't matter because they're in refractory and not listening to shock. Anything that wasn't, you're putting it all in refractory. And so you're trying to get all the things that were not timed to be timed to the things that are in refractories. Sometimes it doesn't work, by the way, right?
Yep.
Which is why we shock again.
And why we do synchronized cardio.
That makes sense?
We don't hang out.
Okay, so back to my original question. You had normal sinus rhythm, you had a systole, you had normal sinus rhythm. You can think mechanical problems and make sure your leads are set. Let's say they are. So the first thing you should think of is
PACs.
a non-conductive PAC. And when you think of the non-conductive PAC, the first place you should look is where?
T-wave.
T-wave, T-wave.
And you know whether or not that T wave looks the same as all the other T waves or if it's different. If that T wave looks different, but the QRSs and P waves associated with that T wave look the same as all the rest of them, then your evidence towards a non-conductive PAC is pretty darn good. Does that make sense? Okay, so what if my T wave looked like this?
The same as all the rest?
Yep.
Then it would not be a non-conductive PAC.
So then it would not be a non-conductive PAC because why?
Because there's no evidence of a P wave.
Because I have no evidence of a P wave, other than the P waves that I do have.
Right.
The sinus block?
So,
Or unrest.
now I'm going down the sinus block, sinus
If it came back
pause
in time,
situation,
though.
and how do I know the difference between those two?
Whether it comes back in time or not.
Whether what comes back in
The
time?
P.
Or
The
or
P
the,
wave.
or the,
The P wave is what we're specifically talking about, right? Because we want to rule out any problems of conduction in the AV node as well. So the P wave is what we're talking about. So if this P wave comes back as a multiple of this interval, meaning it comes back in time as I'm coming along, then that would be what?
Block.
Then I would call that a sinus block. And what does a sinus block mean physiologically?
The SA node fires.
Quiet.
The SA node fires and something blocked it, as opposed to it didn't fire at all.
Good. So in a sinus block situation, the SA node is
Functioning.
functioning normally. There's no problem with the SA node itself. The problem happens after the SA node. The problem is with the atrial cells themselves or the pathways, but it's after the SA node, right? If it's a sinus pause, then what does that mean in terms of my rhythm?
Will not be tiny.
This will not come back in time. This would be out of time. And what does that mean physiologically?
something happened to this thing.
Something happened to the SA node before it fired that prevented it from firing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everybody clear on that? Good. Okay.
Cory?
Yes.
Just for clarification, sinus block comes back in time and there's nothing wrong with the SA node?
Correct.
And a sinus pause is 1 or 2, does not come back in time, but there's something wrong with the sinus. The SA node.
Correct.
And a rest is 3 or more. It does not come back in time, which also means that there's something wrong with the SA node.
Correct. That would be our sinus arrest,
Okay.
assuming that this did not come back in time. So our only defining difference between a pause and a rest is how long we had that asystolic moment. Everybody clear on that? Yeah?
There's
You
mine.
good? Good?
I have
Yes.
a question. I think,
You sounded so sad.
Own it. Own it.
I love your questions.
I'm thinking about the word block
Yeah,
at this point in time. What is that?
what
Like,
does,
is it
what do
a
we mean by a block?
constriction
It's just
No.
like a cock block.
Nope.
of ions? Well, I'm well familiar with that. But like, what is stopping that signal? Is that like a sudden failure of ion channels, or like what?
Yeah, good question. So it could be any number of things.
Oh,
It could be this cell is normal. That cell's normal. So everything's gonna happen normally in that cell. This cell is gonna be the cell that's wrong, okay? It could be that what is wrong with that cell is that these channels that are supposed to respond to the ions coming in here,
mhm.
something is engaged in those channels and prevent them from opening. Maybe I have a drug, an
Right.
antagonist drug, that is blocking those channels from opening, and therefore that cell cannot fully depolarize.
Right, or like mag.
Yep,
Yeah,
that could
okay.
be, that could be one thing.
But, so if it's just like a fleeting block in your AV node, like blocking out specific channels in in a pattern, which is type 1, heart block, type 2, Wanky block, what is making those specific channels not follow the normal signals?
So you're
In
asking,
an
you
order-
just
you
asked
know
two
what I mean?
different questions. I wanna make sure I'm gonna answer your question.
I'm gonna
Yours-
toss one.
That question right there was not related to the first question you asked.
No, so the block is impeded ion channels,
It's
for
impeded ion,
whatever reason.
it's either impeded ion channels, or this cell could have a longer refractory period for some reason.
Right,
So for example, succinylcholine is a depolarizing agent that then prevents depolarizing subsequent depolarizations.
right.
So that could be, it could be a drug similar to that that's causing the problem, something to that effect. Now go on with what your second question
I
was.
mean, I guess what I'm just really trying to get at is like when we go on patients, I'm visualizing, like, my dad has cardiac conditions and he's, you know, a super overweight dude. What is blocking, there's a correlation there. What is blocking his ion channels and how is it related
Yeah, it
to
doesn't
what I
always,
outwardly see
yeah,
on my
understand.
patient?
it doesn't always have to be ion channels though. It could be the sodium potassium ATPase pump that's not functioning correctly because that area is ischemic. And that area is ischemic, so therefore that pump is not getting
Because
ATPase.
there's no ATP.
Correct, and so then it can't repolarize properly,
Right.
right? And because it can't repolarize properly, it can't then depolarize because it's still in the repolarization process, so it couldn't listen to this signal. That's a possibility. That's another reason why there might be a block that's happening there.
Which is why ischemia causes this issue.
Yes.
Is because of ATP creation is not,
Yes, you might have, so these were, let's say these were sodium channels. Maybe you had something, these channels down here are potassium channels. Maybe you had something that was a drug that was opening potassium channels. And because it was opening potassium channels, which way is potassium gonna go? In or out? Say it out loud. Out. Potassium's gonna leave. If potassium's gonna leave, what's gonna happen to this cell?
Going to
Gonna
get
get
less,
negative.
It's gonna be what?
less,
What's gonna
less
happen
of
to
a
the
charge.
membrane
It's
potential?
gonna become more positive.
More positive.
It's gonna be more negative. Because you have
Said
a positive
negative.
ion.
I should do.
Because you
Only
have
one
a
plus as
positive
opposed to
ion
two
beam,
pluses.
So it's gonna be more negative, which means when this cell sends its ions in here, it never was able to increase the membrane potential enough to even affect these channels because it was so negative to begin with. So that's 3 different ways that you might have caused that physiologic block. A fourth way is that this cell is just dead. So therefore it can't send the signal to this cell because that one's dead. So we have, we have to have, the signal has to go around or the signal is just stopped and it
But that
can't
would
go
be,
any further.
but that would be a permanent thing as
That would
opposed,
be a- that would be a
as
more
opposed to
permanent block.
PAC, which would be
That would,
temporary.
that would be a more permanent block.
Yeah.
All of those things,
If we had that block, then when we have like atrial rhythms or junctional rhythms, because we don't have the SA node anymore.
yeah, possibly.
Or is it
That's
not-
assuming that's the SA node. If this is the SA node, then that's not the case.
Okay.
But that might lead to other rhythms that we've discussed and we'll discuss in moments.
This is maybe like a follow-up question to that. I'm interested in understanding like what differentials you could like associate with these type of blocks. So I could like figure out what like my next moves would be. So if someone had a secondary heart block type 2, something like that, am I thinking to myself like, is it an electrolyte imbalance? Is it
No.
drugs? Is it like, is there anything that is there any sort of like list that I
Yeah.
can come up with?
Yeah. We're gonna, this is kind of the point of being a dramatic, right? Because now we're
Yeah.
coming up with our lists.
Good segue, Andrew.
So assuming that I've drawn this reasonably accurately, let's assume that my P to Ps are all even, right? My P to Ps are all accurate as we go through. What kind of rhythm would we have here if my P to Ps are all in time?
It's like this
Regular.
What, no,
second
it's,
degree type 2.
yeah,
I would have a second degree type 2 going on
Yeah.
here, right?
Good job, you saw it, you just couldn't say it.
Type 2.
I know, I couldn't, I was like, words.
So I've got my Movitz 2 here, right? This is what Andrew just asked, so it's funny that I just drew exactly what he just asked. There's a couple ways you're gonna come up with the answer. Right, so we've got a Movitz 2 here, and the question is, why do we have this block that's going on here, okay? So, first of all, it's completely blocked, not partially blocked. And why do I know that it's completely blocked? It's completely blocked, not a problem with cells having weird repolarizations, that kind of thing, and how do I know that?
No QRS.
Because I'm dropping a QRS and
Interval is short.
my interval is not just short, but it's
No.
It's the same.
It's the same. My intervals are all the same, which means when it comes time for this to happen, something is completely wiping out the heart altogether, right? That's the difference between our Movitz 1 and our Winkybach, right? Our Winkybach that has the elongating PRI, it's elongating because cells are affected, but they're not wiped out. And I lose a QRS not because the cells were completely wiped out on one, I lose it because it just kept going and going and going until I was just completely refractory to that particular time. And I needed time to have that all reset. Here, I don't have a repolarization problem when I have a depolarization because everything's happening normally all the way through. Everything's completely normal. I don't have a problem with my P wave translating to my QRS because everything's the same all the way through. But periodically, the entire system below the atria are wiped out. I have that situation where the entire atria are wiped out below, then I don't have a transient problem and I don't have kind of this temporary thing that's happening like I would have with Winkybach. I've got some seriously poor cells in there somehow that are completely blocked for some reason. Something is completely taking that heart away from its ability to do anything. Not just taking longer to do it like we see in Winkybach, but it's wiped out completely. If it's wiped out completely, it's pathologic. Not just pathologic in the sense of benign, but pathologic in the sense of being malignant, right? So things that this could be, I might have dead tissue that's there. I might have a blockage in one of my arteries that's feeding the AV node, and sometimes I get enough ATP built up to make my job work, and sometimes I don't, right? And that depends on how big of a block this happens to be, right? This is a 3-to-1, but I might have a 4-to-1, or I might have 2-to-1, something to that effect. But
If
the
that was the
reasons that
case-
I'm in here are because it's definitely pathologic and damaging of the heart. So we might have myocardial infarction that's happening that would lead to this. I might have a heart failure that's happening that's leading to this. I might have a blockage of my blood flow to the AV node itself that's causing this. But all bad in this case.
So, yeah, so like, I guess the move that I'm trying to get to is like, I see that on the monitor, like with a patient, I put pads on a patient, something like that, so I prepare for the worst case scenario. So, like, I guess another question that I've been having is like, when I heard somewhere that like a winky box is really bad too. And is there some sort of like way to differentiate why they're bad and what the solution is?
Yeah, so winky box can be bad or not bad. Winky box are those, so winky box, like first degree heart blocks, might be fairly benign. So maybe I have something that's engaging my parasympathetic system a little bit more, and that's causing a disruption in some of the cells within the AV node to repolarize properly. Okay, because we're elongating that process. That's a possibility. That would be a fairly benign thing that might lead to something bad, but the cause is not necessarily bad. Does that make sense? I might also have heart disease that is making that tissue ischemic, which would be a bad cause to a bad rhythm. The engagement of my parasympathetic system might be a good cause to a bad rhythm, meaning it's easy to correct. Or I might have ischemia happening that would be a bad cause for my bad rhythm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that would come down to the rest of my history